Kyle Busch says he wants to stay with Gibbs Racing and is willing to take less money in his next contract deal. And Erik Jones is officially confirmed to be returning to Petty GMS Motorsports in 2023. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight into those really quickly. The first we're going to talk about is Brad Means. As it was announced on Friday morning that Brad Means is going to crew chief for Raja Crew for the rest of the 2022 season. Brad Means has been a veteran crew chief for many years in ARCA and the NASCAR Xfinity Series as well, and now we'll get an opportunity to crew chief for Raja for the rest of the season. Hoping that Raja for the rest of the year can have a good run. He's still currently the points leader in ARCA, which again, Raja's been the points leader for pretty much a majority of the season. Despite not winning a race, he's been super consistent, has been finishing up front more. Hopefully he'll be able to go out there and help Raja Crew have an opportunity to get his first ever ARCA victory. It'll be big if he ends up doing it, and glad to see that Brad Means is getting an opportunity to crew chief for Raja Caruth. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Race for the Championship. As the Race for the Championships trailer has been officially revealed, and it's going to premiere on September 1st on USA Network. I think it'll be 8 p.m. Eastern, if I'm not mistaken, is when the show is going to happen. It's going to be every Thursday starting on September 1st, so a month from today will be the beginning of the show. The trailer absolutely looks incredible. Unlike Life in the Fast Lane, this actually looks absolutely serious and looks really good, and I hope everyone could tune in. It's a shame it's not on Netflix or basically like Amazon Prime's. I feel like if this was on Amazon Prime or Netflix, I think this show could be really big for the sport, but still, this show looks incredible. This could help the sport in some areas and also maybe not help the sport in other areas, but it looks really good in my opinion. It's basically NASCAR's answer to Drive to Survive. It looks awesome, looks incredible, and I'm definitely going to be showing in, definitely tuning into that show. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, we're definitely going to talk about Indianapolis Motor Speedway quite a bit in today's episode. The first story we're talking about is the attendance from this race. And according to Nathan Brown, who does a lot of coverage for IndyCar, he says that attendance was just a little over 60,000 for this Cup Series race, which is up a little bit more, where last year's race had a little under 60,000. This race had a little over 60,000. He also mentions that overall for the weekend, it's about 120,000 as well that showed up to the racetrack. That's solid attendance, all things considered. There were reports saying about 70,000 showed up. Have a little over 60,000 people show up is not too bad, all things considered. I mean, yes, I know that you want like 300,000 people, but again, Indianapolis hosts 300,000 seats, so you're not going to get that same crowd for NASCAR as you are for the Indianapolis 500. That being said, though, I do think those numbers are pretty solid. They're not great. You want those numbers higher, but I do think they're a lot better than initially, and those are definitely the numbers for this race, and decent numbers. Not great, but could be definitely better for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course. As was reported by Adam Stern on Saturday morning, the NASCAR will pay Chicago a permit fee of $500,000 plus 50% interest of net commissions on concessions, merch, and $2 per ticket sold. Remember, the Chicago Street Course will be making its debut on the NASCAR schedule starting in 2023. It will be taking place during July 4th weekend. I believe July 4th to 5th or July 5th to 6th is when this event in session is going to take place. This is definitely a major event for sure, and honestly, they're paying a lot of money. I think it's noted that Lollapalooza, they have to pay $7 million, basically $7 million a year, so they're definitely getting a much cheaper fee compared to this. Now, there's also been definitely concerns about the political side of stuff when it comes to Chicago Street Course, considering Lori Lightfoot, who's really behind the operations of this thing. Basically, it's unclear if she's even going to be in politics after the next couple months, which really could play a major factor into it. But that's when it comes to the money. That's the permit fee that NASCAR is going to have to pay. It's not a major surprise that is how much, though, it's going to cost. Not a major surprise, to be honest. Not a major surprise, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Gibbs Racing. As Gibbs Racing decided to basically go ahead and show the tape that was on the car, of the 11 car, and I believe also the 18 car as well in Indianapolis, as Denny Hamlin also basically responded, basically saying that NASCAR and JGR executives do agree they probably should show the tape on the car. I absolutely love that they're being transparent how big the tape is, because when you see that tape, that size of the tape that it is from the video that basically came out. Now, I think that this is a really good thing that they're doing, is what they're doing here is they're basically showing what tape, and because a lot of people ask, Why did they disqualify for the tape? The reason they got disqualified is because they're not allowed to anything to the car. Now, they could have gotten hit with much harsher penalties according to the rules. If you modify the cars or mess with the cars, you can get much bigger penalties. So I think these penalties are absolutely fair that they got, and disqualification wasn't fair, and they did not appeal the penalties. The only team that really appealed any sort of penalties they received was Firmware Motorsports, which is a 100-point penalty. Right now, if they didn't have that 100-point penalty, they'd be sitting, I think, top 20 in points. In fact, they'd be right behind Denny Hamlin in the points right now. That being said, though, I love it. They're used to being transparent with the fans and showing the piece of tape. I think that's a great thing they're doing, and it's pretty solid, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. As Denny Hamlin was being interviewed by the media in regards to this qualification, and he says that he has brought the trophy from Pocono to Indianapolis to give to Chase Elliott. Now, he did basically say to the media as well, it's probably going to be hard to get the checker flag away from him, but he decided to bring the trophy to Chase Elliott. Now, Chase Elliott had spoken to the media, and he said he really did not want the trophy. He basically said that Denny Hamlin can keep the trophy. And Denny Hamlin basically also mentioned he was going to play fun with the trophy and stuff, and he basically told Chase Elliott, warned Chase Elliott, that that was going to be happening, and they both were good sports about it. Of course, Denny Hamlin posted something really funny on social media, basically showing him basically eating, basically drinking, I think, out of the thing, and basically eating as well, which I thought was really, really funny for sure. But I'm not surprised he basically decided to go ahead and bring the trophy to the racetrack and basically show it and basically hand it back to Chase Elliott, considering Denny Hamlin, of course, crossed the line first. But basically, what he ended up doing was, they ended up getting disqualified. So he basically ended up finishing 35th in the race and didn't score any points. Well, scored 2 points down because he did finish 35th. But still, basically, he got a bunch of points lost that he could have gotten. But it definitely is what it is. And I think it's funny that he basically had that video. I thought it was a great video for sure. And definitely really, really funny, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and draw on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Porsche. As Porsche has bought 50% stake in Red Bull, and they will basically go ahead and become a 50% stake owner in Red Bull starting in 2026. Honda is expected to leave after 2025 and 26, and AlphaTauri and Red Bull, which both are associated with the Red Bull company, they will both basically become Porsche organization as well. Pretty excited to see a Porsche that's coming in. It's been rumored that Porsche was going to be trying to buy inside of Red Bull, and it's been expected for a long time that Porsche was going to be buying into Red Bull and buying a major stake into Red Bull as well. Of course, we know the 2 new major manufacturing brands are coming in. Audi's been trying to get working with McLaren. There's a lot of rumors that they're going to be switching or maybe over trying to work with a team like AlphaTauri or Aston Martin, or an organization like that. But I don't know if they're going to go through. But we've got 2 new manufacturers coming in to the sport of Formula One. I think that is honestly something that's really quite cool in my opinion, is that they're bringing 2 new manufacturers into the sport. I think it's absolutely amazing. Great to see for sure, and very happy to see that we've got 2 new manufacturers coming in, and actually Porsche buying a stake in Red Bull, something I did expect. What I did not expect was the news around Fernando we'll get into later this week, but pretty cool to see that Porsche has bought a 50% stake into Red Bull. I think that's really, really exciting and really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about the IndyCar race from the Indianapolis Road Course. After today, there's only 4 races to go in the Indianapolis Road Course weekend, and on Saturday, Alexander Rossi went on to win the race. Now, Alexander Rossi had to beat Colton Herta, because Colton Herta, I think, did have the fastest car coming into the race, but unfortunately, Colton Herta had some electrical gremlins and some electrical problems that basically slowed him down, and they ended up unfortunately falling out of the race. They tried to change something in the car to try to get back in to salvage some points. Unfortunately, their race came to end, meaning that Alexander Rossi got around and picked up the victory. Alexander Rossi, ever since he announced he was going to be going to Air McLaren SP for 2023, he's been absolutely improving. He has been much closer to winning, and he's definitely an outside contender for the championship this year if he can continue performances like this. He's definitely been coming alive here in the last couple of weeks. Driver I want to give a shout out, though, is Christian Lugard, who actually ended up finishing second. Christian was really fast. He was on the podium majority of the day, and that 30 car looked absolutely incredible in this race. After this race as well, 4 races to go, Will Power actually is the new points leader for the first time in 5 or 6 weeks by 9 points over Marcus Ericsson. If Will Power continues his consistency, I think it's going to be really tough for anybody, including Marcus, to beat them. Congratulations, though, to Alexander Rossi on picking up the victory, and a massive win for Andretti Autosport and Alexander Rossi. And now we're going ahead and jump to the next story of today's episode, as we are going to be talking about the Hungarian GP. Now, the Hungarian GP was absolutely nuts for sure. The race early was dominated by George Russell. He put on a pretty dominating clinic early, but got passed by both of the Ferraris by Sainz. At the time, got passed by Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, because he basically came down pit road and lost a couple positions. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen really started making up a ton of ground. Remember, he started 10th in this race, but what ended up happening was that Ferrari decided to once again screw up the strategies and end up costing Leclerc an opportunity to win by basically deciding to put hard tires on for Charles Leclerc instead of basically putting on the normal medium tires, and Max Verstappen got around him, basically got there. Not to mention, one point, Max Verstappen ended up winning a little bit and had to get back around Leclerc, and Leclerc basically just did not have the overall pace. And then eventually they brought Charles Leclerc down pit road and dropped all the way from being a winner of this race all the way to 6th position. There'll be a late, virtual safety car came out for Valtteri Bottas, but Max Verstappen eventually pulled out about a 6 or 7 second lead over Lewis Hamilton. He would come off the corner, and for the second race in a row going into the summer break, he picked up the victory. Max Verstappen now has an 80-point gap, meaning that Max Verstappen can DNF for the next 3 weeks and not score any points the next 3 weeks, and he still will be your points leader after that. Man, if you're in Ferrari's camp, you got to fix your strategies, because it's honestly ridiculous how many freaking times they've been called out or how bad their strategy is, and they still continue to have bad strategies left, right, and center. Been very frustrating to watch. But I will say this for sure. Congratulations to Max Verstappen. I think Verstappen's got the championship locked up at this point. I do not see anybody beating him at this point for the championship. And massive congratulations to Max Verstappen on picking up a massive, massive victory in Formula 1. Now he has an 80-point gap, and there's only 260 points available. So basically he has 180 points that he needs to score over basically the next 10 races in the season, which I think is very doable. Massive congratulations to him on picking up the victory. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about IMSA. As it was announced on Friday that IMSA is officially going to be returning to Indianapolis in 2023 on September 15th through 17th, called the Battle of the Bricks. It'll be a 2-hour and 40-minute race on the track, with in 2024 the plan being to make the race a much longer event and be a race that is going to take place most likely in the nighttime. It's rumored to be an 8-hour race as the next one, or potentially a 24-hour race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indianapolis Road Course track. This will be the first time that IMSA has been on the Indianapolis Road Course in Indianapolis since, I believe, 2013 or 2014, so it's been nearly a decade since the last time IMSA has been on the track. But there's been a lot of rumblings around this for months now. It's been actually rumored for a while, since basically they've been testing cars at the racetrack, at that track for a while now. It's no secret and no surprise that IMSA really has been wanting to come back to the Indianapolis Road Course, and I'm absolutely all for it. IMSA always puts on a really good show at any type of track. It doesn't matter what type of track you go to. Sports cars have really tended to put on some amazing and great battles and great shows. Always look at the Road 24, for example, as a great example. But this is massive for IndyCar, or not IndyCar, massive for IMSA. I think there's a potential, because a lot of people have been asking if this is going to be part of that NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader. This won't be, by the way. Maybe in 2024 it could potentially be possibly part of that, but at least for 2023 it won't be part of the NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader. So I'm very happy that the IMSA is coming back. I think it's amazing that they're bringing basically it back to Indianapolis. I think this is awesome for sure. And congratulations to IMSA, and congrats to coming back to the track in 2023. And it'll be the first time in a long time since they have come back to the racetrack. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Carson versus Colby Howard. Now, the Truck Series race was absolutely chaotic, and there was a lot of tempers that were flaring near the end of the race. So, first one we'll talk about is Carson versus Colby Howard. So, if you watched Camp World Truck Series race with, I believe, around 10 laps ago, Grant Enfinger had just passed Ty Majeski for the lead, and Grant was basically cruising to an easy victory. Well, Carson and Colby Howard were battling really, really hard for position near around, I believe, 7th or 8th position. And Carson basically, instead of basically being easy after some contact, he goes ahead and right rears Colby Howard down the straightaway. Now, Colby Howard, justifiably so, was very unhappy with Carson. Look, I love Carson, but his move was absolutely stupid. You do not right rear somebody down the straightaway. I understand you're a playoff driver, and I understand you being a little frustrated. Get this. I'd be a little frustrated too if someone gave me a little bit of contact. But at the same token, at the same time, you're in the sport to go there and race. And in my opinion, Carson was completely in the wrong. and it was really, really stupid to right rear somebody down the straightaway. He knows better than that. I know he's only 18 or 19 years old, but anyone that is in the racing world should know better than that to right rear somebody down the straightaway. So if Colby Howard dumps Carson Osborne and costs Carson a championship, I don't blame him. Colby had a great night going, best run he's had all year, and basically got screwed out of a potential chance for top 5 or top 6 because of stupidity from Carson. That was just dumb. I love Carson. I love you, dude. But seriously, bro, you know better not to go ahead and dump somebody down the straightaway. I thought that was really, really stupid and a really bad move, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about John Hunter Nemechek versus Taylor Gray. Now, after all that chaos between Carson Osborne and Colby Howard, we had John Hunter Nemechek getting frustrated with Taylor Gray. So on the restart, John Hunter Nemechek had much older tires than Taylor Gray, and Taylor Gray got a really, really strong restart, I think 2 or 3 laps ago in overtime. John Hunter basically sends it in the corner, goes way, way wide, goes up the racetrack, and basically completely dumps Taylor Gray. This, in my opinion, was egregious. This is a really bad move, in my opinion. Now, Taylor Gray, he basically was really, really pissed off, justifiably so, on the radio, and basically went off and basically said that he's not going to be winning this championship and he's not going to be winning races. The next time I see him, I'm going to dump him. Now, John Hunter basically brushed it off in his post-race interview, but then later released a statement and a PR statement regarding the situation and released a statement on that. In my honest opinion, John Hunter's clearly in the wrong right there. And it's lack of respect out there. Look, I know that John Hunter's trying to make sure he wins the race so he advances, but bro, you got 2 laps to get around him, and you're telling me you're going to run into the back of him and basically go up the track and dump somebody? Just a really stupid and really egregious move, in my opinion. But again, it's not the first time we've seen John Hunter make some bad mistakes in 2022. And I think John Hunter's a great driver. Man, some of the things that this guy has done this year have just been stupid and absolutely ridiculous. And there's a reason why John Hunter has not been a cup driver here for a while, because of this kind of stuff right here. I think what John Hunter did was absolutely wrong, and I cannot blame the other guy, being, of course, Taylor Gray. I cannot blame him for being upset. I thought that was stupid on his part, and he basically cost himself an opportunity to win, because it's absolutely dumb, in my opinion. Kind of frustrating that kind of happened, but it is what it is, and hopefully they can resolve it. But it seems like things are not going to be resolved, and it seems like Taylor could dump John Hunter at one point, and it would be justified, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Miguel Plato versus Sage Karam. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at the Indy Road Course, you saw some tempers between Miguel Plato and Sage Karam. Near the end of the race, I believe Sage Karam had gotten into the back of Miguel Plato and spun him out. Now, Miguel Plato, after the race, near the end of the day, a couple hours after the race, he released a statement on Twitter talking about how Alpha Prime Racing had said some really, really bad things to him, and they said some things and cussed him in front of his son. Tommy Joe Martins responded on Twitter yesterday morning and basically released a statement. He basically responded, doing what Kenny Wallace does by drinking coffee, and basically responded to this situation and basically gave a straightforward answer. And multiple people in the garage even confirmed this, that they did not really say any of this stuff. Now, I understand Miguel Plato definitely being frustrated, but if this stuff was being said to him, this definitely would be a lot bigger. However, Tommy Joe basically came out and straight said, I like racing Miguel Plato. We like Miguel Plato. We basically, they had an argument, said, we're sorry what happened to Miguel, but same token, same time, some of the stuff that he really said was not true. And I trust Tommy Joe Martins. I really, really do. Tommy Joe's been one of the best guys in this industry, and it's people that work at that team that are also really hard workers as well and do a lot of great things for the sport. I understand Miguel being frustrated. Trust me, he's basically had a great run, potentially great run going. It kind of fell apart. But at the same token, at the same time, he basically got kind of told off a little bit, and it's kind of crazy to see what happened. Hopefully we don't see more issues between Miguel. I think this is the last time Miguel is going to be racing in 2022. We'll see if he's back in 2023 or not, and we'll see what happens, because it is what it is, and we'll see what happens going forward. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about Pittsburgh. As Adam Sir reported on Friday that Pittsburgh tourism officials would love to follow Chicago and stage a NASCAR race, a street race that is, in Pittsburgh. Now, of course, we've already talked about how the Chicago Street Course will be making its 2000 debut next year on the July 4th weekend. And Pittsburgh wants to now jump into play and basically have a race in the Pittsburgh area. Now, let me point out a couple things here. Let's just not start adding more street course races. First of all, we just got an announcement when it comes to Chicago, and it's going to be a 3-year deal. So if Pittsburgh is going to want a street course race for at least NASCAR, maybe IndyCar could come there for next year. But if basically Chicago, they want a street course race in Pittsburgh for NASCAR, they're going to have to wait 3 years. I don't want to see NASCAR just going ahead and adding more street course races and people pressuring NASCAR to get in there. Don't get me wrong, a street course race is really going to help the sport when it comes to bringing people in. But you also have a track named Pocono that's in that area as well. And it had amazing attendance. And it had great attendance. And if they go to Pittsburgh, you're most likely going to lose Pocono. This is Pittsburgh being a little bit foolish, in my opinion. And again, we have not seen a NASCAR Cup Series race yet at the racetrack. So let's pump the brakes on the Chicago until we have seen the race in Chicago Street Course. If the racing is good, then maybe in the future we can alternate and go to Pittsburgh. But in my honest opinion, let's not just start going to races and start adding racetracks to the schedule, basically just because of the fact that we see the Chicago Street Course. Again, let's not start adding a bunch of stuff. NASCAR, please don't go gun home and start adding street course races. You've seen the reaction of people who've been basically against street course racing. There's been some who've been for. There's definitely been a lot of people who definitely have been against it. I promise you that. Even people in the industry have been against the moves. So we'll wait to see what happens if Pittsburgh eventually long-term gets it. But I don't want to start seeing million tracks basically getting it. And in my opinion, let's not start adding a bunch of races that we don't 100% need, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Blaney. As Ryan Blaney was on the NASCAR broadcast, was on the IndyCar broadcast, and was being interviewed by Kevin Lee, and Ryan Blaney says he would like to test an IndyCar one day. Ryan Blaney, of course, currently drives a 12-14 Penske. We definitely got some news in regards to that coming up here later in the episode. But Ryan Blaney says he'd like to test IndyCar one day and get behind the wheel of an IndyCar and test for a team like Team Penske. A lot of NASCAR drivers have been very interested in either testing an IndyCar or getting behind the wheel of an IndyCar. We know that Kyle Larson, he's shown interest in running potentially the Indianapolis 500. And now you've got Ryan Blaney who's interested in testing an IndyCar. Now, Ryan Blaney probably doesn't want to race in IndyCar. He probably wants to stay in NASCAR long term. But IndyCar and NASCAR cars are starting to somewhat become similar. They've got the carbon fiber bodies. Of course, they've got the Delora chassis and a lot of other things as well that are going on with the car that are very, very similar. I would love to see Ryan Blaney test IndyCar and see how it ends up working for him. If he's successful, maybe he can do the double in one pin, maybe do the NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader. That's one thing I would love to see. But if Ryan Blaney does it, I think it'd be great if he tested it one. I think it'd be awesome for sure to see. And maybe we're going to see Ryan Blaney one day test an IndyCar. With him basically calling, I want to do it, maybe we'll see him do it. But for sure, maybe we'll see Ryan Blaney in the long term test an IndyCar in the future. And now we're going ahead and draw to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Gibbs. As Ty Gibbs was being interviewed by the media, and Bob Poggers put this report out, and Ty Gibbs says that he's trying to avoid any thoughts of running Cup in 2023 and is focused on basically doing the part-time starts he has and basically trying to get as good a finish as possible to try to impress. Now, right now, Ty Gibbs absolutely knows that he's currently the guy who's in command. If Kyle Busch does leave Gibbs Racing, he is currently the backup and contingency plan that is ready to go. And the reason is because, one, he's got now 2 Cup Series starts, both of them top 20 finishes, by the way, which have been really, really impressive. And also, he's also Joe Gibbs' grandson, so he's definitely going to be the backup driver, but he's also been winning a lot of NASCAR Xfinity Series races as well. There is a really strong, good possibility that there could be an opportunity for him to go Cup racing next year, but I think it's very smart for him to not basically go there thinking that he's going to go out there immediately win as well. But I will say in the 2 starts that I've seen from Ty Gibbs, he's kept his nose clean, has been also aggressive at times, but also not been over-aggressive. And that's the thing when you're a guy who's young and really shouldn't even be, wasn't really supposed to be in there to begin with until Kurt Busch had some issues with concussions. He's done very well, though, in my opinion. I do love to see him go full-time Cup racing next year, but I think he's being really smart by thinking about it and not push himself to go in and just go gun-hose blazing, and he wants to get a little more experience in Xfinity for making the jump up. But I also love the fact that he's basically aware that it's like, I want to get more experience before I jump up. But there's a chance he could jump up next year. I think it'd be great if he got the opportunity to jump up, and we'll see what happens. But I think it's smart for him not to think about that and try to focus on winning an Xfinity Series championship. And now we're going to head and draw to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brett Moffitt. As this is a story that's expected to come out here later today, but it was officially revealed by Catchfence's Chris Knight, who works for Catchfence, Front Stretcher, I should say, that Brett Moffitt is basically officially going to be out at Our Motorsports and will not be returning to Our Motorsports after this race due to a lack of funding. Now, who is currently rumored to replace him in a 02 car? Rumors currently are Blaney, who had made starts last year for our Motorsports. He is currently rumored to be taking over the 02 car for the rest of the season, who currently, by the way, drives the 9 for CR7 Motorsports. Now, let's be no secret here. There's been a lot of rumors and rumblings that our Motorsports has been thinking about downsizing from a 3-car team to a 2-car organization. In my opinion, they never should have expanded the 3-car operation. They probably should have stayed a 2-car operation and over time build up to a 3-car operation on the scales and before they had all the funding and stuff. Now, again, it's been no secret. There's been rumblings that Hour is going to be shutting down unless someone brought funding. And unfortunately, Brett Moffitt does not bring a lot of funding. And it's really disappointing, too, because I think Brett Moffitt is a very, very talented and a really gifted driver. He's done really good so far in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Well, at least he's finished 16th points, which isn't great. But he's a very solid driver, in my opinion. And he also doesn't know where he's going to be racing again. He does talk about how, the system is and stuff, and it's kind of flawed, which I agree with him. It's basically kind of ridiculous that basically it costs as much as it does. So, in my opinion, I hope Brett Moffitt can definitely find a way to get behind the wheel of something else and race. Again, it is very disappointing that he's going to be out of a ride at our Motorsports, but it is what it is, and I hope he's able to find an opportunity and a ride to race at a team going forward. So we'll see what happens, but I hope he gets the opportunity to race for another organization here. It's disappointing, but it is what it is, and we'll probably all see Blaine Perkin behind the wheel of one of those cars. Again, not a major surprise, and it's not a major surprise to me that they're going to be doing that, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ross Chastain. Now, Ross Chastain was being interviewed by the media and was basically being asked about why he decided to go through the access road and drive off there and why he decided to get a 30-second penalty. Well, Ross Chastain was being interviewed, and he says he thought that he followed the rules when taking the access road. When I basically read this, I'm like, are you freaking serious, Ross? You really didn't even try to turn the corner. Now, let's talk about the end of this race, because this race is absolutely chaotic, which we'll get into another incident here in just a minute. But Ross Chastain on the final restart, instead of basically turning right into the corner to basically not get damaged, he drives completely straight through, drives straight across, and then uses the access road, gains a major advantage, and basically drove back on the access road and got by. Now, I know some people saying they kind of exposed a flaw in the system, and there was apparently no access line rule, but literally Ross cheated his way up there and shouldn't have freaking even been there to begin with, and cost an opportunity for a great battle between Tyler Reddick and Austin Cindric, because Ross Chastain decided to be Ross Chastain. Now, don't get me wrong, if he tried to basically expose a rule, which I think fair play to try to expose a rule in a system, that is a pretty big fair play right there. But in my honest and sincere opinion, he should have absolutely known better not to do that. He basically knew that what he was doing. He was basically trying to win the race. It nearly cost Tyler Reddick a victory. And what if he basically dumped Tyler Reddick? He could have basically caused more chaos and maybe a little more angry in the race review and probably rate the race a lot lower than I probably would have. But had Tyler Reddick not run, because Reddick absolutely deserved the victory, had the best car. Chastain was probably a 10th place car most of the day, and he spun out multiple times and nearly ended up winning the race. I just have no idea what Ross Chastain was really thinking right there. And for him to basically decide, you know what, I'm going to go through the access road and cheat the way. Kind of funny for sure, but honestly also kind of frustrating for other drivers, because he basically almost cost the guy who won the race, Tyler Reddick, an opportunity to win the race anyways. So I think Oscura made the right decision. I anticipate a line access rule. He ended up finishing 27 because of that. I understand he's probably frustrated about that, but same token, same time, you didn't follow the rules. You basically went through the access road and you basically tried to cheat your way into the system and try to win the race. So definitely frustrating for the fans for sure, to basically we almost saw an opportunity cost for other drivers. And now we're going ahead and draw to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Ryan Blaney versus Daniel Suarez. Now, Ryan Blaney, near the end of the race, you probably saw all the chaos on the last couple of restarts. And on the final restart of the race, we saw absolute calamity. Ryan Blaney was very angry at Daniel Suarez after the race. I believe he dumped him after the race and basically said that he was really frustrated on the radio. Now, Daniel Suarez basically responded to Dale Jarrett's comments on Twitter, and Daniel Suarez basically called out Dale Jarrett, basically telling him that he needs to go ahead and watch the replay for making assumptions about what Daniel Suarez did. Now, Daniel Suarez calling out Dale Jarrett is something I did not expect to see yesterday. But getting back into between Ryan Blaney and Daniel Suarez, I have seen so many people blaming Daniel Suarez for the incident between him and Ryan Blaney. But if you actually watch the replay, you can literally see that Harrison Burton is basically pushing Austin Cindric, and then Austin Cindric basically pushes into Daniel Suarez, and that's how Suarez got into Ryan Blaney. There really was nowhere to go for Daniel Suarez. So I have no understanding why people are blaming Daniel Suarez for that when everyone was completely losing their minds. And by the way, just not forget that Joey Logano basically went all the way down to the apron and basically caused a 7 or 8 car pileup in the first incident. And I don't know why Ryan Blaney wasn't even calling out his teammate for causing one of the major incidents in the race. Just think there's got to be a little bit of consistency, a little bit of accountability on that part. But I found it funny also that Daniel Suarez called out Dale Jarrett. I thought that was really, really funny. But at the same token, in same time, in all serious here, I think that basically Daniel Suarez basically calling out Dale Jarrett. And again, Daniel Suarez was not in the wrong. I understand Ryan Blaney being frustrated. He had a pretty good race, was up front, won a stage in the race, and was going to have a really solid, a really good day. But in my honest and sincere opinion, I do think that Daniel Suarez is completely right. He was really not his fault at all to begin with, and I think that absolutely he was in the right to go ahead and call out Ryan Blaney. Not Ryan Blaney, call Ryan Blaney too, but also call Dale Jarrett at the same time, in my honest opinion. Now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Jimmie Johnson. Now, Jimmie Johnson was on SiriusXM NASCAR radio on early Friday morning, and he says he would not rule out the possibility of running the Chicago Street Course race in 2023 and making his return to NASCAR. Now, this is not the first time we've heard in 2022 that he's looking to potentially make a return to NASCAR for 2023. We've also talked about how he was looking to maybe do the NASCAR Indy double, running the Indianapolis 500 2023, and also racing maybe for like Trackhouse Racing and doing the double and driving the Project A1 car, where Justin Mars has given him the potential opportunity. If he does the double, they'll give that opportunity to do that. But I would really love to see Jimmie Johnson come back and race in NASCAR. Now, is a road course race the best option for him? I really don't know if this is the best option, because let's be honest, Jimmie Johnson, even in NASCAR, was not the greatest on road courses. Yes, he did win, I believe, at Sonoma in 2010, but outside of that, where did Jimmie Johnson really do great at road courses? He didn't do absolutely fantastic. He did have some success in Xfinity road courses, but really in Cup Series, he kind of struggled, so I'm not expecting much from Jimmie Johnson if he does come back to NASCAR, but I will, at least at the road course, I should say. But I think it'd be great for Jimmie Johnson to come back and at least run in NASCAR. I've been missing Jimmie Johnson racing. It's just when he's not being in the series, it's been so disappointing to watch, because I do really miss Jimmie Johnson being in the series. So I do hope he does come back to NASCAR, or at least races. Whether he does, I don't know, because he did say that he doesn't have anything set for 2023, and we're in late August now. Don't get me wrong, IndyCar, their season doesn't start, I don't think, till March or April next year, though the schedule for that has not been released. So that schedule is probably coming here at some point this month, just like the NASCAR schedule, which is expected to be released sometime here in the next couple weeks. I think it's great, though, Jimmie wants to maybe come back to NASCAR. He has shown interest in maybe making his return. It's because IndyCar and NASCAR are becoming much more similar, though they're not the same thing. They're starting to become much more similar. So I would love to see Jimmie Johnson come back and race in NASCAR. I hope he does have an opportunity to do that, and I hope he gets that opportunity to race in NASCAR once again. So I think it'd be really, really awesome and really, really great, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney. Now, both those drivers currently are under contract with Team Penske through 2023. And Roger Penske was asked this weekend about that when it comes to their contract extensions. Well, Roger Penske basically said stay tuned on the contract extensions for Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, and said he basically gave a little bit of smile. This indicates to me that there are going to be some extensions announced here very, very soon for Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney. Probably in the coming next couple weeks, or even this week perhaps, there's a very strong possibility that we're going to hear about extensions for Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney. Like I mentioned, both drivers are currently under contract for 2022 through 2023. And Joey Logano's already scored 2 victories here, and while Ryan Blaney's not won this year, he has been extremely consistent. Now, how long do I think the contract extensions are going to be for both drivers? For Joey Logano, I expect a pretty long-term extension, especially with Shaw getting a major commitment with the team and staying as long as they have. I think that Logano at least gets a 4 or 5 year extension, most likely probably up until 2028. And by then, Logano will be around 37, 38, which some drivers are starting to retire around that age nowadays. And then they've just been doing really awesome this year, and I think he's only going to get better as he gets older. Ryan Blaney, I think, will probably get at least a 2 to 3 year extension. Probably up until around 2025, 2026, because Ryan Blaney's been really solid over the last couple of years. I just think Roger's going to try to keep both drivers as long as he can, because, again, both drivers are really, really good in the series and doing really solid right now in the series currently at the moment. Both are currently in the top 10 in points, and both had pretty good years so far. It's just that Blaney needs to close out the year with a win at some point. But I think both drivers absolutely deserve contract extensions. They've been doing very, very solid and really, really well, and I'm wishing the best to both of them. Hopefully they're able to have a great second half of the year. Hopefully they're able to get it done and do great this year. Hopefully, Blaney can win, and we'll see more on those contract extensions. But I anticipate that we're going to be hearing about contract extensions for Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney here in the near future. And now we're going ahead and draw on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tyler Reddick. As to Richard Childress Racing confirmed, and Richard Childress basically confirmed to the media that he will be returning to Richard Childress, that Tyler Reddick is officially going to be returning to Richard Childress Racing in 2023. There have been a lot of questions because, remember, Tyler Reddick announced they'll be back going to 2311 Racing heading into 2024. And there's been a lot of speculation about this because there's a major announcement coming from Richard Childress Racing tomorrow afternoon. I think tomorrow mid-afternoon there's going to be an announcement from Richard Childress Racing. It looks like Austin Dillon could be making some cup starts either in 2022 or 2023. But Richard Childress Racing basically told the media that Tyler will be back in the A car in 2023. Now, Rich Childress basically said that he wasn't very happy with Tyler Reddick at the time. Basically said that it was really, really frustrated, and there was a little bit of animosity in his voice yesterday. Well, Tyler Reddick also talked to me. He says he spoke to Richard for the first time since his announcement of 2311 Racing. Now, of course, like I mentioned, that they released a statement and said that Rich Childress Racing statement basically saying that the timing could not be any worse for Tyler Reddick to be heading over to 2311 Racing. This is also the first time, though, by the way, Tyler Reddick's driver scored multiple wins for RCR in a season since Kevin Harvick in 2013, by the way. Now, when we look at Tyler Reddick making this move, why is Tyler Reddick in 2024 going over to 2311? We'll talk about that in a second, but their performance has been getting a lot faster. I think that this is good to see that Reddick's coming back. Again, I'm not surprised. They want to honor the commitment. They want to honor, make sure Reddick does good for the team. And Reddick's been really good this year. I mean, look at RCR. No disrespect to Austin Dillon, but Tyler Reddick's the only reason that the team is even competitive as they are to begin with. That's really the only reason they're so competitive right now is exactly that. You look at the other driver, Austin Dillon, it's no disrespect to him, but Austin Dillon, I believe, is barely inside the top 20 in points right now. He's like 18th or 19th in the regular season points. Compared to Tyler Reddick, who's near the top 10 in points right now, who's gotten 2 victories this year, which again has not happened since 2013 when Kevin Harvick drove the car. He's been the most successful driver in a long time at the camp. And I just think that when you look at Reddick's performances too, he's been so much better than him. And so, again, no disrespect to Austin Dillon, but you have to keep him on the team to keep the team being successful, in my opinion. So I'm happy to see Reddick is coming back to RCR in 23. I know there's been some concerns about that, but I'm happy to see that he'll be back with RCR in 2023, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, we already kind of talked about this story on the channel this past week on Friday, but Bubba Wallace kind of talked more about his contract talks and his contract extension talks with 2311 Racing. Dustin Long had basically reported on this. And Bubba Wallace says he and 2311 Racing have been working on contract extensions and things have been going very, very well. But he also reiterated that he's also currently focused on getting his performances on the racetrack. Now, Bubba Wallace is under contract with 2311 Racing heading into 2023, so he's not going anywhere heading into 2023. And 2311 Racing has reiterated they want to keep Bubba Wallace for a very, very long term. But like I mentioned, he's only under contract through 2023 currently at the moment. I think he deserves a pretty long-term contract, to be honest with you. I know it's going to be a hot take because Bubba's performances haven't been great. Up until recently, Bubba Wallace has only had one finish outside the top 15 since the race at Nashville. His worst finish, of course, being a 35th at Road America. But other than that, he has had a 12th place finish in Nashville, a 14th place finish in Atlanta, and for the first time in his career, he has had 3 consecutive top 10 finishes. And 2 of those last 3 finishes have been top 5 finishes. Bubba Wallace is only getting faster and faster every single week. He is improving on a week-by-week basis and is now in the top 20 in points. Just imagine if they didn't have all the pit crew problems this year, how many top 10s Bubba Wallace could have and potential wins he could have this year. He's been improving every single week. It would not surprise me if he wins Michigan. I really think he's got a shot to win Michigan this weekend. He's been great in Michigan historically, and I think he's definitely one to watch this weekend. This team has been absolutely improving in so many ways. 2311 Racing has been much quicker, has shown much better speed, and that's why they're talking about a long-term extension. But also, when you have the sponsors willing to stay with you, that's really going to help your opportunity to stay with a team as well. Because, again, that major sponsor commitment that Bubba Wallace has, that's a big reason. Of course, Michael Jordan being there, that's really going to help right there. I'm very happy, though, they're going to keep Bubba most likely long-term. Again, he deserves a long-term extension. He's been performing extremely well over the last couple weeks. His performances have been absolutely incredible and great for sure. And again, I think he's only going to continue to improve. And I think you're not only ending 2022 on a much better note than ended 2021 because he's already scored more top 10s at this point than he did last year. But he's ending the year, I think, in a much better note right now. And again, I think the pit crew changes and everything. They got to start building toward next year and a contract. Now, how long do I think the extension is going to be for Bubba? I think it's probably going to be a 3-year extension, most likely, probably up until around 2026. Because again, how long the sponsor stay is going to be determined. But I think their performances are really starting to show up. We're seeing 2311 Racing improve, and that's why Tyler Reddick is probably coming over to 2311 Racing, because I think both of them on the same team, whether it's a 2 or 3 car organization, is only going to make the team a lot stronger. So I'm very happy for sure that they're working on extension for Bubba. He deserves a long-term extension. He's done great for this team. I hope the extension is very, very long for Bubba. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Indianapolis road course. Now, on the day of the announcement for the IMSA announcement, the Doug Bowles and multiple people in the industry confirmed that the Indianapolis road course is going to remain in 2023. However, Roger Penske reiterated there's a lot of conversation about potentially returning to the Oval in 2024. And there's a lot of talk about altering the races starting in 2023, going to road course next year, and then going back to the Oval in 2024 and seeing how things work. Now, I want to get my honest opinion on it comes to the Indianapolis road course and stuff. First of all, I'm not entirely shocked with staying on the road course in 2023. The race did have a decent attendance. Again, we talked about the attendance early in this episode. About 6,000 people did end up showing up to the race, which again, a little over 6,000 people showed up. People did absolutely show up to the race, not to the numbers they probably won, but people did end up showing up to the race. Now, one thing I do want to reiterate is my opinion on the Indianapolis road course and other stuff. I actually not against the Indianapolis road course, except I know my opinions on social media have been a little bit out there, but I'm not really entirely out against the Indianapolis road course. I think there's been a lot of benefits to the Indianapolis road course for sure, because it does provide some very solid racing. But here's my opinion on this. I do think, number one, I do think we need to at least try the Oval with the next-gen cars for a couple of reasons. And I'll explain why. First of all, I think they need to go back to the Oval in some areas. Number one, drivers are craving to go back to the Oval. I saw a lot of drivers posting on social media. Saw Erik Jones. I saw Denny Hamlin. I saw a couple other drivers reiterating this as well. I also saw that Kevin Harvick has basically been complaining about it. I don't blame Kevin Harvick. He's old guard. He's won there multiple times, and they need to return there. Another reason, the prestige of this event. This event on the Oval brings a lot more prestige, and I think your attendance is absolutely going to go up. How much, I don't know, but your attendance will go up. Number three, TV ratings is a big reason why I think they do need to try to return to the Oval. The TV ratings, especially when it comes to the upcoming TV deal, they're going to be much higher than the road course. So I'm going to tell you right now, I don't anticipate the road course numbers. They may be a little higher than last year's numbers, but then again, I'm not expecting major numbers because it's a road course race, and road course races generally do not transfer to major ratings boosts. I don't expect major ratings on that point. And the other reason is, again, because I want to see how the next-gen car races. I do actually think the car could itself actually race a lot better on the actual Oval than I do think it would with other generations of cars. I think it actually would race a lot better. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but again, we haven't seen the car, and I know a lot of people are saying, well, they need to stay on the road course because the Oval really sucked. We haven't seen the next-gen car race. Remember, we improved the mile-and-a-half races. Remember races at Charlotte that used to suck on the mile-and-a-half track? Yeah, that's been proving to be really good, by the way. And you got other people basically reiterating saying that this is good, this is bad, and all that kind of stuff. And if you're not a big road course fan, you should probably leave the sport, which I don't entirely agree with that. You shouldn't be watching road course racing because, again, I did not hate the race, by the way, but also I feel like a lot of drivers in the field aren't a big fan of the road course. We've seen a lot of drivers getting really frustrated about it on social media, and I don't blame them for being upset with everything going on. I think it's just a little frustrating too, and again, I do think they need to alter it. For me, I think alter it. We do need to try to Oval, we need to try to road course. Let's alter, or do what David Land said and do half and half. Half on the road course, half on the Oval, and have it right there, make it a big NASCAR weekend, and do that kind of stuff. I think that'd be really cool. But also, by the way, I am a big fan of the Indy NASCAR double. I think it's something that's been good for the sport for sure. But again, I think more people need to show up to the IndyCar race and make it more of a NASCAR weekend as a whole. That being said, though, I do love the Indy road course. Or we just go to IRP. That'd be a great suggestion because racing is great for the truck series. But I will say I do hope that they try this out. Again, I'm not against him going to Indy road course. I think it's good because, again, I was against it fully after last year. I know there was a clown show near the end of the race, but blame the drivers for that and don't blame NASCAR. Don't blame the track itself. Blame the drivers for the stupidity near the end. The racing can be better, but it is what it is, and they'll be back on the Indy road course in 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Erik Jones. Now, this has been expected for a very, very long time, but Erik Jones has officially signed a multi-year contract extension with Penske GMS Motorsports and will be returning to the 43 car heading into 2023. Now, this has been expected for a long time, but this is something really, really great to see. And not only is it a one-year extension, but it's a multi-year contract extension. Now, it's unclear how long the extension is. However, I anticipate it's probably at least a 2 to 3 year extension, so he'll be with the team for at least a couple years. This is a really, really strong move, in my honest opinion, for multiple reasons, and I'm going to explain why. Number one, Erik Jones, I think, has been extremely underrated this year so far. Erik Jones, I believe, currently sits 18th or 17th in the regular season standings and has been in the top 20 points a majority of the year. The second reason is because he has made that 43 team the strongest it has been in a very, very long time. The last time a 43 car was this competitive was probably around the time AJ Allmendinger was in the 43 car back in 2011, had some really strong runs in that car. Erik Jones has been at points also contending for victories this year. You go back earlier this year to Talladega where he kind of made a bad block. He was leading on the last lap of the race and could have won. He was very fast at Auto Club and could be very fast this weekend at Michigan. He was really strong. Auto Club had one of the fastest cars there and was a top 5 threat. Would not surprise me if Erik Jones does go out there and win the race this weekend. Would not shock me or surprise me this weekend. But you also look at Erik Jones and everything as well. And he came from the Joe Gibbs Racing pipeline. That's something that comes into play. When you come from that pipeline and you're a NASCAR Truck Series champion, had a lot of success in Xfinity Series, you've done very, very well. And what it tells me is that they're trying to build up their program around Erik Jones and make him better. And I would not be surprised if Erik Jones in the next couple years, even going into 2023, he does make the playoffs with this team. He's been doing really good this year so far in the team. He's been doing absolutely incredible. And I think out of everybody in the field currently, at least on the Cup side of things, I think he has been the most impressive driver. Outside of Michael McDowell, I would say, I think he's been the most underrated driver so far in the Cup Series this year. He's been proving it. He's been winning races, contending for wins, and I would not be surprised if he does win a race for the end of the year. But I think going into 2023, what are my expectations? Well, number one, obviously, just improve on what you've done this year, even though you've had a great year. Improve on what you've done. Make your equipment a lot better and work on the consistency as well and get the finishes that you need going into next year. Go and try to see if you can win races because I do think that Erik Jones is going to have a pretty realistic and a great opportunity and a great chance to win races in 2023. But again, I'm so happy for Erik Jones. He absolutely deserves this opportunity to return to Penske GMS. I know that a lot of other teams were looking at him. I know Rich Schultz Racing was looking at him. I do know that basically Stewart-Haas Racing was looking at Erik Jones as a potential candidate, which I think he could benefit in the 10 car. But there's also rumors Eric Almirola could come back next year. Now, I think this is great for sure. It takes him off the free agent market heading into 2023. It takes him off the free agent market for the next couple years, actually. And also does help these guys sponsorship willing to help with Focus Factor staying on board. I anticipate Focus Factor will be on board for the next couple years. But I'm overall extremely ecstatic and happy to see Erik Jones is coming back to Penske GMS. He's been a benefit and a major, major asset to the team. And congratulations, Erik, and welcome back to Penske GMS. You absolutely deserve it, and you'll be back with the team heading into 2023. Very exciting news for sure. Congratulations, Erik Jones, on returning to Penske GMS. I expect major improvements from Erik Jones in 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Busch once again. Now, Kyle Busch has been in the news over the last couple weeks for many, many reasons, and the major reason is because he is not signed for 2023 yet, and they do not currently have a sponsor for 2023. And Kyle Busch was being interviewed by the media this past week, and he really wants to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing and return to the team heading into 2023. And he says he's willing to take concessions and basically take less money and lower his market value and basically drop how much money he wants to stay with the team. He actually has also said, though, to me that he has talked to other organizations. It's unclear what teams. There's one team I know for sure that he has had conversations with. The other part of the story, though, is that Kevin Harvick said this, and it's kind of something that really, really shocked me. Kevin Harvick says he would 100% open to having Kyle Busch as a teammate. Now, if you told me about 10 or 15 years ago that Kevin Harvick would like to be teammates with Kyle Busch, That would have been something I never would have thought would happen, but he's open to having Kyle Busch in the organization. Now, I definitely have a video talking about the story and talking more about what team he could be driving for 2023. But let's talk about this in Kyle Busch, talk about lowering his market value. It's good to see a Kyle Busch is starting to finally realize and starting to take a reality check and realize that he needs to lower how much money he's going to want when it comes to this contract. Because let's be honest, Kyle Busch made about $14 or $15 million every year with the M&M's deal. Now, I know people say, well, $25 million goes to Joe Gibbs Racing. Well, majority of that money does go to Kyle Busch. And Kyle Busch is one of the highest paying drivers. What Kyle Busch, I think, is finally starting to realize is, look, we're not finding a sponsor that's willing to work with us. We need to find it there. It's good that he also wants to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing, which I think is going to be his best opportunity to be extremely successful. Kyle Busch has been a driver that's been extremely successful for the Toyota pipeline. And not only does this affect it, but also the fact that Kyle Busch has a truck series team that's effective. If KBM goes to Ford, which a lot of potential he's going to go to Suarez Racing and drive the 41 next year, the truck team most likely is going to go to Ford. They're going to go to Ford, and that's going to hurt Toyota's development. That's why they're trying to keep him as well for that development as well. But again, we've been talking about how sponsorship is really going to come into play. Now, if Kyle Busch is willing to drop some of his market value and drop how much he wants to basically spend on this next deal, basically, he's trying to save a little bit like money, wants to make a lot of money, but drop a little bit and drop the value he wants. I think he's starting to finally realize and it's starting to hit him that basically he's cost a lot of money and basically wants to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing and be successful. Now, again, there's been a lot of rumors and rumors also, though, that he could be going to Suarez Racing in 2023 as well and driving the 41 car. A lot of talk that Cole Custer could be going back to Xfinity next year and he could be in the 41 because, again, Cole Custer, while he did get a top 10, he's underperformed extraordinarily, but he did have a great run, so I don't want to give him kind of hand on Cole Custer this time because Cole did have a good run. He did have a decent run in the race, even though it's due basically to the fact everyone basically decided to die in the first corner and wreck each other pretty much in the corners as well. Now, getting back to Kyle Busch, I do think Kyle Busch deserves to stay at Joe Gibbs Racing, and it would be very disappointing if he does leave Joe Gibbs Racing. And it's kind of nuts to think that this is something we never thought about. If he leaves Joe Gibbs Racing, though, at the end of this year, this is going to be the biggest free agency move that has happened in NASCAR, probably since Dale Jr. leaving his own organization of DEI and going to Hendrick. And very coincidentally, it kind of also involved Kyle Busch as well when he went over to Joe Gibbs Racing. But again, Kyle Busch has been their most successful driver. He's won 2 championships. He's the only driver who has 2 championships. But you look at Kyle Busch's performance as well on the racetrack. Kyle Busch, for the first time in his career, has failed to finish in the top 10 in 7 races. Now, technically, he did finish second at Pocono, but he got disqualified. So that's why he finished last and did end up finishing second. But he's on his longest streak of finishing outside the top 10 in his NASCAR career, which is a major, major reason why basically I think that he's having struggle finding sponsorship because, again, he's not as good as he used to be. And I think he's finally realizing that while he's still a 2-time champion sport, he's only scored 4 victories in the last 3 seasons. One in 2020, the year basically he and Adam Stevens were still working together. 2021 only scored 2 victories. And so far this year, he has only scored 1 victory. And his performances have been absolutely dwindling. He's having a lot more problems recently. Again, I think Kyle Busch is still a really top talented driver and top 5 driver in the sport right now. But it's just his performances haven't been there as much this year as they've been in previous years. Now, that being said, though, getting into Kyle Busch and stuff, time is running short. We're in August, and we're getting close to the end of the year, and a lot of people say that we're getting near to the point where the fiscal year happens, and some people say in the NASCAR industry, for most businesses, the fiscal year is generally September for the NASCAR industry because they start working on 2023, and a lot of sponsors are already getting close to their plans for 2023 being set. Kyle Busch needs to be willing to, I'm glad that Kyle Busch, though, is willing to go there. Now, him and Kevin Harvick on the same team, getting back to that, him and Kevin Harvick being on the same team, though, is something, like I said, I would never have expected a few years ago. That's something that I never thought could even happen. But Kyle Busch may not have a choice. And think about Gene Haas as well. Gene Haas brings in a lot of money. He's worth a ton of money. Gene Haas has billions of dollars. He's invested in a Formula One team. He's got major involvement in that. He basically built a Formula One team here in the North Carolina area. And basically, he's just been super, super successful for the sport as well with everything he's done. But this is something I've been saying. We've been hearing a lot of other organizations. Kyle Busch should go to Superhouse Racing. He easily can go to Trackhouse Racing next year. Trackhouse wanted to open another car. Hendrick if they wanted to. Because I know Hendrick's been mentioned, but again, Alex Lohman has a contract with the team. So I don't see him going there. Maybe Petty GMS he goes to if he doesn't go to there. But man, I don't think they're going to be willing to pay out. This is something to definitely watch for sure. I think there's only two organizations Kyle Busch is going to end up in. He's either going to end up in Joe Gibbs Racing or Suarez Racing are the most likely options. But again, there are other organizations that are very, very possible of where he's going in 2023. So we'll wait to see what happens. But man, if Kyle Busch doesn't end up in Joe Gibbs Racing next year, that's going to be something definitely crazy. And it's obvious who's going to replace him. Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs is basically the guy next in command to get in there. He's had Cup Series starts. He's finished top 20 in both races, and he's been only getting better and better in his Cup starts. And we may see Ty back in the 45 this week. We're just going to wait and see what happens. But it's going to be definitely crazy if Kyle Busch does not return to Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023, in my opinion. So anyway, that is going to be it for today's long NASCAR and Motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notification on so be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Patreon and other my social medias, Patreon, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Support me on those platforms as well. And also comment below your thoughts on today's video. Give me your thoughts. What are your thoughts about Kyle Busch? Do you think he'll return to Joe Gibbs Racing or not? And what are your thoughts about all the other stories discussed here today on the channel, including Erik Jones returning to Petty GMS in 2023? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, we're going to have picks for Michigan. On Wednesday, we're going to have a NASCAR news video. Thursday, we'll have a video talking about Kyle Busch, where I think he could end up. And then Friday, another NASCAR news video. And then Saturday, I've got other content on the ways we get you set up for Michigan. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. And I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.